Hello students, I hope you're doing well. In this lecture, I'm going to provide a case study of our topic from last week. Remember that we talked about land acquisition and laws in U.S. history. We considered a number of maps. We looked at the quality of the maps and how map technologies have improved over time. And we looked at how what we call the United States of America was not acquired all at the same time, but rather over time and from various entities. Notably, the original 13 states, the Louisiana Purchase, and the Oregon Territory were acquired from European entities. But from California to Colorado and southward, all through Texas, these lands were acquired from Mexico. As we considered the development of the nation, we considered how geography really dictated the shape of these parcels, because as we explored the new lands, mountains and rivers would stand in our way. We thought about where Native Americans have been forced, what areas they've been forced into through our colonization of these lands. Then we put together a timeline where we thought about all the significant milestones legislatively and militarily that reflected the development of this nation. Now, all of this is fodder for your final paper. You might not write a paper about the Wilderness and Scenic Rivers Act, but understanding these legislative components could be a significant part of the outline that you craft. So look back to these slides as research that we did together. So now on to our topic today. So while we were on break, I was touring my friend around the great state of Colorado, and also I was traveling to a conference. And I had such a new and different lens of this whole experience because of our conversations. So I wanted to take you to some of these places that we enjoyed in the past week and that are an exact expression of what we were talking about in our previous meeting. So here we have the Garden of the Gods. This is a place I've been many times. This is where I do my research, recreate. I can get there on my bike from my house. This is a current view of it. Notice the density of forest right here in the central garden. So the garden itself is a significant place. It was a gathering place where the mountain Utes met up with the nomadic tribes of the plains, and they traded and had spiritual gatherings. Also in this proximity, we have Manitou Springs, this sacred springs. We also have Tava Mountain, Pikes Peak, of great importance to our indigenous sacred spirituality. There is a lot of archaeological evidence to support Native American use of the Garden of the Gods, and hopefully we'll meet with the city archaeologist Anna Cordova throughout this semester. Now here's a picture taken of the Garden of the Gods in the 1880s. Notice there are no trees. This is an extension of the Great Plains ecosystem, and it's likely that the Native American tribes were managing this forest, preventing the forest from establishing, because this was a place. Just in your mind, imagine here that there are many Native Americans gathering. Their lodge, their teepees are here, fire rings, etc., for great spiritual events. Nowadays, the Central Garden looks like this. It's paved, it's ADA accessible, and it has a plaque. So if there's any conclusion to this lecture, after talking with you, I was just shocked at how many plaques there were all over these great sites in the Pikes Peak region. So in the Central Garden, on the main rock, there is this plaque that reads, "The Garden of the Gods, given to the city of Colorado Springs in 1909 by the children of Charles Eliot Perkins in fulfillment of his wish that it be kept free to the public forever." Eliot Perkins was an American businessman and president of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. Now, imagine, it was free before Perkins arrived. So this is an interesting statement and hopefully reminds you of our previous conversation. Now, this is another, I did not do scientific research to put this lecture slides together. I just tried to act like a tourist. And so in every slide, this is primary writing. It comes from the citation at the bottom of the slides. I did not write this. I left this original writing here so you could make of it what you will. And so here, one of the most important factors is the idea of the name of the Garden of the Gods. So here, although we acknowledge the great importance of this Native American crossroads, we also acknowledge the funny colonialistic history of its name. Apparently, some prospectors thought it would be a great place to drink beer, and that is why we call it the Garden of the Gods. Moving right along, just uphill from the Garden of the Gods is Pikes Peak, America's mountain, about which the song America the Beautiful was written. Now, what we learned in riding the cog railway was that the $65 we were paying to ride it was nothing compared to the great wealth required to ride the rail 100 years ago during these early times of Colorado Springs, a colonized place in the great indigenous place of the Pikes Peak region. So right here, at the top of the mountain, over 14,000 feet, we have a plaque. Surprise, surprise. This plaque was installed in November 1906 and is founded on 14,114-foot summit of Pikes Grand Mountain, now known as Pikes Peak. It reads in recognition of the notable career of Zebulon Montgomery Pike, soldier, explorer. The people of Colorado have placed this tablet on the summit of the great mountain first seen by Pike on November 15, 1806. General Pike was born in Lamberton, now Trenton, New Jersey, January 5, 1779, died April 27, 1813, after a victorious attack on York, later Toronto, Canada, buried at Madison's Barrack, New York. This guy got around. This tablet commemorates the 100th anniversary of Pike's southwestern expedition. What I want you to appreciate is that Zebulon Montgomery Pike never made it to the top of Pikes Peak. However, he was the first person to really explain the mountain and point it out as a point of great significant geography in our westward expansion, in our exploration of the American West. So the Ute people called it Sun Mountain, Tava Kiev, and it turns out Pike never actually tried to claim it as his own. However, he always talked about it being the Grand Mountain, and it became known as Pike's Grand Mountain and eventually Pikes Peak. In this article, which might be of interest to you, they really go into the details about the use of the apostrophe and how an apostrophe assumes like a colonialistic ownership, but over time we have agreed to drop the apostrophe and it's more just the mountain that Pike saw, not that Pike owned the mountain. So take that in consideration of our conversations. So then on the way down Pikes Peak, right near the Garden of the Gods, are the Cave of the Winds. And this magnificent landscape is inside of the mountain. So we go from the top to the inside. Once again, we find that white people found the caves and they took possession of them. So discovered in 1881, the caves, of course, are millions of years old. They have rich indigenous importance. But two brothers named George and John Pickett went exploring and found them and decided they'd be the next greatest touristic attraction of the Pikes Peak region. So you can read more about cave history on the website, and I do urge you all to go there. It is fascinating landscape, and I'm hoping we can go there in our class. But alas, there inside the caves, we find more plaques and more ownership. So here in the middle of the cave, the tour guide stopped and said, some white people, I don't recall their names, insisted that, probably the pickets, right, who founded it, insisted that at this place, this quotation is read, dreams of mountains, as in their sleep they brood on things eternal. They did not mention the author of this piece, who is Charles Hart Higgins, and this was actually written about the Grand Canyon. But of great interest to me was the fact that on every tour for the last over 100 years, they've stopped in this very place and given credit to the white people who found the caves. They did not even give credit to the poet who they are plagiarizing right here. Interesting indeed. So, who is this guy Higgins? He wrote about the Titan of Chasms, and he was one of the foremost white people in the Grand Canyon. He knew all about it, more than almost anyone else, and he would help escort people, lecturers, explorers, scientists into the canyon. So why this is in the cave, I am not entirely sure. And then, of course, there's another plaque in the cave, and I could find no evidence of where this came from. The tour guide didn't talk about this, but it says Mizpah, which is a Hebrew word for watchtower. And it's mentioned in a biblical story, and it's basically an emotional agreement. And this plaque says that the cave shall be opened in the year of our Lord, 2081. So I'm not really sure what this is all about, but curious indeed. Now, our final stop on this great adventure took us farther west to the Continental Divide. So Pikes Peak itself is it's a volcanic landmass, and it is different from the Rocky Mountain front and the fault that created most of the mountains in Colorado. So here we are on Cottonwood Pass in Buena Vista, and we are at full moon sunrise. This is looking to the east. We see the moon rise over the eastern slope of the Continental Divide. All the water facing in this direction flows to the Atlantic Ocean, and the water on the other side flows to the Pacific Ocean. This is looking towards Crested Butte, Aspen, towards the western slope. So another sign indeed. This is my girlfriend from college. And here we see also evidence of our conversations from last week. The United States Forest Service, Department of Agriculture, one of the land managing agencies we described last time we talked. And we see here that they too are claiming stake to a geographic feature. And with that, my lecture is through. I hope that was a fun tour around some of the touristic things, but also very colonialistic things that you can experience here in the Pikes Peak region. Thanks for joining me today in the field, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.